Wall Street veteran Bernard Madoff has been arrested and charged with running a $50 billion Ponzi scheme.
Congress wants to know what caused the Enron meltdown.
Now, while the collective rage currently is focused on WorldCom,
Tyco CEO Dennis Kozlowski was convicted of looting hundreds of millions of dollars.
This is one of the biggest fraud cases ever.
Their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
Find out more on this week's episode of White Collars, Red Hands.
So today's intro is a little more informal than normal because I want to start it off with a question. Now, Nina, you get a lot of guff for maybe being less up to date on some of the historical stuff we do, right? But one thing I've always found you knew a bit about were presidents. So tell me.
I do.
Tell me, Nina, what do you know about the 29th president of the United States, Warren Gamaliel Harding?
Warren G. Harding.
That's the one.
I don't know much about him. I know he was a family man. I know that he really cared about the people of this country. I know he fought hard for our rights, our liberty, our pursuit of happiness. I know that he, worked tirelessly day in and day out all the years of his presidency. He was a good husband. He was a good father, better lover. He could make a mean steak. Tomahawks, preferably, would grill for the entire White House lawn. And on the 4th of July, during his presidency, he invited the whole nation to the White House to watch fireworks in the front yard. And they all held hands and they sang "God Bless America."
All right, I'm just gonna.
Finale of the fireworks went off.
I'm just gonna pump the brakes on your improv there because a lot of it was wrong. So, what if I told you that Warren G.
I like no notes about him.
That Warren G. Harding, although was one of the most beloved presidents during his tenure, had an administration so fraught with corruption that one scandal was known as the worst in presidential history until good old slick dick Richard Nixon was embroiled in the Watergate scandal. It involved bribery surrounding some land in Wyoming, of all places, called Teapot Dome, and was the largest of quite a few scandals that tarnished the Harding years. Join us today as we discuss the "this is my scandal, this is my clout, tip me over and pour it out," because that's what Teapot Dome is all about. On today's episode of White Collar Red Hands.
Wow, that was some great singing, Kashan.
Oh, thanks. I'm well known for my my nursery rhymes. That's
You are. Mother Goose who? Kashan Goose.
Mother Hoose. Okay.
Mother who?
Anyway, welcome back to another episode of White Collars Red Hands, everyone. I'm Kashan.
And I'm Nina.
And yeah, we're going to spend a good amount today diving into the background and the presidency of Warren G. Harding, the 29th president of the United States, and about the Teapot Dome scandal, as well as some other scandals that really tarnished his reputation. And there were more. There's more than what will be in today. If you really want to know, you can go and find out as much as you want about Warren G. Harding. Definitely one of the least talked about presidents, I think. This story begins in the beautiful sweeping plains of the Midwest, Nina's homeland and synonym for bad, Ohio. Warren Gamaliel Harding, which, by the way, Gamaliel is a biblical name. There was a prophet or someone named Gamaliel. It's from the Bible. No idea why.
It's probably somewhere very random in the Old Testament, is my guess.
I think most of the places in the Bible are random, but that's fine. No idea why Gamaliel is falling out of fashion when we still have Peter and Paul. But, why wasn't there another Beatle named Gamaliel? That's all I'll say. But
it would have been perfectly.
But Warren G. Harding was born on November 2nd, 1865 in Blooming Grove, Ohio. And he went by the nickname Winnie as a kid. For a boy, Winnie? It's actually Edwin. It's a common nickname for the name Edwin, or actually any name that ends with W-I-N. It's more common as a nickname for men than it is for women, at least back in the day it was. But don't worry, he dropped it later. He didn't go by Winnie his whole life, keeping the tradition of political leaders really not liking being called Winnie. There's going to be a picture of Xi Jinping here in the video, so don't you worry. Warren was the oldest of 8 children, with a large family being supported by their patriarch, George Tyrone Harding, who was a physician, which was super easy to do back in the day. I guess he literally just read some medical books, went on some ride-alongs with a doctor, and then took like 1 semester of medical college, and they were like, yeah, sure, you can be a doctor.
That explains a lot.
Yeah, it was
a lot about the medical system back then.
It was the late 1800s. They're still using like leeches and stuff, right? So
yeah, I was gonna say that explains the leeches.
You don't need a lot.
I said it explains the leeches and the orgasms. They would prescribe women orgasms.
I've read In the Next Room by Sarah Rule, the award-winning play. I know. So when Harding was 5, the family relocated all the way to another small town in Marion County, Ohio, Caledonia. There, his father branched out from medicine by buying a local newspaper entitled The Argus. This was Warren's first foray into journalism, and he became extremely interested. When he was 14, he enrolled in Ohio Central College, where he published a college paper, the Iberia Spectator. It was also known as Iberia College at the time. And upon graduation, he moved to Marion, Ohio, also in Marion County, where the rest of his family had already relocated. After coming back to the small town, Warren worked odd jobs as a teacher, selling insurance, and made moves to start becoming a lawyer, but journalism stayed his true passion. So he and 2 others rustled together $300, the equivalent of just under $10,000 today, and purchased a local newspaper that was going under, entitled the Marion Star. Warren's family were abolitionists and staunch supporters of the Republican Party, because remember, before the party swap, the Republican Party was the supporters of abolition. Marion as a city and Ohio as a whole leaned Republican as well, but the county, Marion County, leaned Democrat. Because of this, Warren painted his newspaper with heavy strokes of moderate political views with a bent towards Republicans. And this actually highlights one of Warren's big personality traits, because he wanted to be everyone's friend. He was always seen as genial, and he didn't want anyone to dislike him.
That's funny because he's so stoic in like every picture you see of him, but RBF, I guess.
Well, it kind of fit him, though, because people called him bland, but basically he was just wholly inoffensive, which would actually really help him in his political career. Is that, you know, he was the moderate. He was the Joe Biden of the Democratic Party, and definitely not the Bernie Sanders, you know, back in a time when that was maybe more beneficial. The population of Marion grew, and with it, so did Warren's newspaper. Warren added to his personal coffers through many savvy investments and became a well-known and well-respected businessman in the area. Well, mostly. See, Warren met his future wife, Florence Kling, through some mutual acquaintances, and they hit it off. But Florence's dad, Amos, hated Warren. Amos was a banker with a streak of being hard-headed and obstinate, and there were many unflattering opinions posted in the Marion Star about him and his business practices, which made Amos firmly not want his daughter involved with the editor of that newspaper. Well,
I think that's a little bit fair.
True. What's not fair is that it was also partially because of racism. See, there was a rumor swirling around Warren's genealogy that he had some black ancestry very recently in his family tree. And although it doesn't really matter, by the way, it has since been debunked by DNA tracing. He was not. But this rumor sort of followed him throughout his time now, all the way into when he was later the president. But at this time, Amos started spreading these rumors to try and get people against him, to dissuade his daughter from marrying him. But after Warren threatened to legit beat him up, he stopped. Which would be scary because, as I mentioned, Warren was like well over 6 feet tall, and I'm sure he could handle himself. Like, people said he looked like a basketball player. He was quite tall. But, you know, maybe threatening to beat up her dad did something for her, because soon after, Florence and Warren were married in July of 1891. And Florence Harding is one of those women that you could really believe started that behind every good man, there's an even better woman phrase, because she was also an extremely savvy businesswoman in her own right, who further helped build his newspaper, The Star, and would later be the reason that Warren became president, which I'll mention a little bit later.
Power couple.
You know it.
Hashtag girl boss.
They both look so, like, sunken, though. Just definitely 1920s American-looking people, for sure.
Yeah, a little bit hungry, tired.
Yeah, he
grouchy.
does. Warren Harding does look constantly tired. I actually didn't put it in here, but while he was at the Star, he frequented bouts of like fatigue and depression that were so strong that he was like in a sanitarium like multiple times.
Oh, wow.
For like brief stays, for like mental breaks. Because he was just...
And that probably didn't help him a whole lot because sanitariums weren't necessarily known for their relaxing, kind, gentle practices.
Yeah, no, they didn't give the guys orgasms.
No,
like they
just
did the women when they were hysterics. So, you know, a little bit worse. They just made him eat cornflakes and told him like not to masturbate or something. So Warren had been exposed to the political sphere through the newspaper and used his journalistic influence to support candidates, including a soon-to-be close friend, Joseph Foraker, in his 1885 Ohio gubernatorial race.
Oh, the what race?
The 1885 Ohio gubernatorial race.
Gubernatorial race.
Mm-hmm.
Gubernatorial.
Gubernatorial means relating to the office of the governor.
Oh.
So the gubernatorial race
is a new word every day.
Is the race for the governorship.
Wow. I had no idea.
Well, now you do. That's
gubernatorial.
In 1895, he ran for the seat of Marion County Auditor, his first time running for public office. And although he eventually lost, Warren showed some promise. And next year, he began speaking across the state on behalf of former Ohio Governor William McKinley on his way to the White House himself.
Yes, we proudly represent William McKinley in Ohio. We're very proud.
One of the other presidents that was assassinated that no one talks about.
Yeah, he was.
Just like everyone forgets. But he was.
They always McKinley.
So Warren speaking throughout, you know, he was part of, you know, the Ohio political sphere. So he was speaking on behalf of the president. This gained him notoriety within the Republican Party as well. And with this backing that he had gained through that, he was elected to the state Senate in 1899 and was reelected to a second term in 1901. Afterwards, in 1903, he started looking up, eyeing a seat as the governor of Ohio, but instead was talked into a nomination for lieutenant governor, like the vice president of governorship. Yeah, I didn't know this was a thing. I don't even know if all states have a lieutenant governor or if maybe they got rid of it. I didn't really look into it. But they used to have running mates that they would have a lieutenant governor, which he won. He was the lieutenant governor of Ohio alongside banker Myron Herrick, who had led that ticket. Herrick ended up being panned as governor. People really disliked him, while Harding was praised for doing relatively little in office, which is what I'd assume is pretty much what the lieutenant governor is supposed to do. Very little.
Yeah, I don't think that they're getting the hard-hitting issues.
If there even is hard-hitting issues for a governor to begin with. It's like people rag on the vice president for not doing anything. So imagine all the way down at the state level. They're like, I don't know. We just pay that guy to sit around. In 1905, Harding again wanted to be governor, but the party supported Herrick rerunning for the position, which he would eventually lose, with Harding no longer on the ballot card with him. He did not rerun for lieutenant governor. but Herrick lost anyway. When the governor's seat became open again in 1910, Harding finally won the party's nomination for the position, but ultimately lost to incumbent Judson Harmon, who had beaten Herrick previously, as the Republican Party had been in the midst of this. I'm not going to get into it deeply, but at this time, the Republican Party was in the midst of a really big schism that was led by former president at the time, Teddy Roosevelt, who left office in 1909 and then split from the Republican Party, forming something called the Progressive Party. So because of this split, the votes were also split amongst the governorship, and then the Democrat just won, which also happened during the presidential election of 1912, which saw Woodrow Wilson get elected, the Democrat, and then he won a second term even. And this whole time, the Republican Party is basically infighting, led by Teddy Roosevelt. In 1914, Harding instead decided to set his sights on a national Senate seat and ran, once again, a wholly inoffensive campaign, which he would become known for, designed to be palatable by all, and again, it worked. And he took home the seat in a landslide and became one of the Ohio senators. Harding immediately began winning people over on both sides of the aisle with his affable personality, and was seen as a rarity, being one of the only people liked by both the Taft Republicans, which was the actual Republican side of the schism, and the progressives on the side of Teddy Roosevelt. When the presidential primary came along in 1919, this meant that Harding might have a chance, and he threw his hat in the ring, very quietly announcing his bid for the presidency. So by this time, at the end of the 1910s, the progressives had actually merged back again with the Republicans, probably because they were so damn tired of losing, that they came back, and because all the progressives were back in the Republican Party, it was highly likely that they were going to nominate Teddy Roosevelt 11 years after he left his second term in office.
What?
Yeah, so this whole thing is like Teddy Roosevelt left, like he finished his second term. He wanted to run for a third term, which was constitutional at the time.
Yeah.
But then his party still wanted to be like, no, we want to keep, like it was a tradition that presidents only serve for 2 terms, even though it wasn't mandated that they could only serve for 2 terms. He wanted to run for a third term, and that's kind of, I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure that was part of the reason that they had this break. And they had instead got behind Taft, who had been obviously elected president as well. Taft won the Republican presidency after Woodrow Wilson. So they were looking to nominate Teddy Roosevelt, but that was before he actually up and died. But while leading up to who they were going to nominate, and it just kind of threw everything into chaos. And at the 1920 Republican National Convention, the first few ballots showed no one close to winning the majority needed for nomination. So they were split. They had no idea who they were going to nominate. And the frontrunners did not even include Harding, who had done really poorly in the state primaries. I think there was only like 11 states that had primaries, though. So pretty much the nominee was voted on completely by the Republican National Convention, which is what they were doing. He had done poorly, and he actually wanted to drop out at one point. But when he was on the phone with his like campaign director, I think, he was saying that he didn't know if it was worth it to go on. His wife took the phone and was like, no, you're going to keep going. Like, you're not going to give up until it...
Mind a quitter.
He's like, you're not going to give up until it's done. And then he like kind of turned around and he started and like he gave a really good speech the next time and he decided to keep going. So that is why Florence is the reason that he eventually was president, because he was going to give up after like a few bad states in the primaries. And that's what led him to here. Still doing bad on the votes at the Republican National Convention. But as the night dragged on well into the next morning, those assembled grew tired of waiting. There was this whole thing that like the people that had like the delegates that had come to vote, they really didn't want to pay for an extra day of a hotel. Like all of them really wanted to leave. They didn't want to stay here for an extra day. So they were really pissed off that it was taking this long. And
like, I'm tired. Let's just do it.
Well, and they're started having these like rumors going around that like people were going to vote for Warren G. Harding because at least he was like, he's inoffensive, he's palatable, he's moderate, whatever. Like, people don't hate him. Like, people really disliked the other candidates that were being voted for, but no one really hated Warren G. Harding. So these rumors began to circulate, and more people that decide that although he's milquetoast, that they eventually built up a consensus around him because they heard other people were going to vote for him. And then he ended up earning the nomination for the presidential run, like in a landslide by the end of the night.
That's actually crazy. They just were like, fuck it. Make this guy the nominee.
Oh, it's only like,
we're done.
It's only the most important job in the country. I don't know. Let's just throw this guy up there.
Phone it in.
Exactly.
Just phone it in. We want to go to bed. We want to go home. We want to have dinner.
The exact vibes. Calvin Coolidge, another frontrunner, was picked as his running mate, and they were to take on James Cox and his running mate, the Democratic vice president nominee and future 4-term president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Oh my.
Mm-hmm. Harding ran what is known as a front porch campaign, which is a very low-key campaign where he actually didn't tour the country. He traveled a couple times to make speeches, but mostly he stayed home in Marion County, Ohio, and let journalists come to him.
That's actually crazy, considering Marion, Ohio, to this day is not very big.
And it wasn't at the time either. And he ran on this like return to normalcy as a quintessential like everyman candidate. And this really did endear him to the American people. And he took home the presidency in a landslide, receiving 60.2% of the popular vote.
Wow.
So when it came to appoint people to his cabinet, Harding chose political friends of his that he met while a state level politician in Ohio, which later earned the people around him the moniker of the Ohio Gang. Many of these men were highly qualified, but a few of them were openly considered to only have been put into position by their close relationships to Harding. Sound familiar?
I wonder who else has done that in recent years.
Could be anyone. Two of which would really come to tarnish the reputation of Harding's presidency in the Veterans Bureau Director Charles R. Forbes and Secretary of the Interior Albert B. Fall. During Harding's presidency, he was actually very well liked. There's a lot that we could go into about it, but we've spent enough time on his past. And the highlights of his presidency that people liked included him being surprisingly open about racial equality for the time, a general upturn in the economy due to or in spite of wide-ranging tariffs that he put into place, including very large tax cuts for the wealthy that have, since been quoted as the reasons to bring back the system in recent years. Our current president likes to talk a lot about Warren G. Harding and is actually one of the only times I've heard his name at all.
Yeah, that's someone in his not in his cabinet, but somebody in his PR team is going back and pulling that out because he didn't just know about that.
Yeah, who knows? In the 1920s, I don't know if you know this, the top earning bracket had to pay 75% of their income in taxes.
I did hear something like that it was like, you didn't, you paid a normal amount of taxes on up to $2 million or something like that. And then everything after that was taxed at 95%.
Yeah, well, that is how the bracket system works. But yeah, the top bracket was 75%, at least in this, and he dropped it down. His administration at least dropped it down to in the 20s. So
that's a huge jump.
Yeah, over the course of a couple years. So it was definitely a big change. And something else that he is known for is an acceptance of adopting modern technology and an embracement of the second industrial revolution that was happening, or just a little bit past happening. He was one of the most well-liked presidents of all time by July 1923, less than 3 years into his term, when he started having some abdominal pain. He initially started to feel better before relapsing 2 days later when he was found to be having issues with his heart as well as pneumonia. When August came around, his wife Florence was reading to him in bed when he was struck with a cardiac arrest that shuffled him off of this mortal coil just barely halfway into his presidency. But as his body was cooling...
I thought that he didn't serve his own whole term.
He did not. But as his body was cooling and Calvin Coolidge was getting sworn into the office of the presidency, the scandals that were going to tarnish this well-loved president's legacy were just beginning to show their presence. So today we have 3 scandals that really did Harding's presidency dirty. And we're going to start with kind of the closest to him and then like move outwards from there. Starting with the fact that Warren Harding, despite his looks, was a notorious womanizer. So there were constant rumors about women that had been seen cavorting with Harding, but no real proof came out until after his death. One of these women was Carrie.
He cheated on Florence?
Multiple times. Kind of their whole relationship.
I am so upset. That woman was the only... Oh, men are never grateful for a good woman.
Yeah, he like...
they aren't.
I guess he just had a really strong sexual appetite. There's many books actually written about his sexcapades, so if you want to really get into it, there's a mountain of literature at your disposal, so please have fun. I'm
going to start writing Warren G. Harding fan fiction.
Sure, you wouldn't even be the first. One of these women...
You know what?
One of these women was Carrie Fulton Phillips, who Harding kept as a mistress for 15 years from 1905 to 1920. The two grew close after Warren comforted Carrie when she lost one of her sons as a toddler. So romantic. And their torrid love affair went rampant. In 1963, a biographer...
He said, let me give you another one.
Disgusting and insensitive. In 1963, a biographer writing a book on Harding discovered 250 love letters written from Harding to Carrie that really insinuate that he considered her his true love of his life. At one point, he even offered to leave his wife and run away with the also married woman. Carrie also had a husband, to which she denied his offer. Both their partners actually discovered the affair at one point and were obviously furious about it. And Carrie and her husband left to Germany, where she became very sympathetic to the country still reeling from its terrible World War I loss at the time.
Oh, man, wait till she hears about what's going to happen in 20 years.
She might have been dead by then, but yeah. She later returned, and they rekindled their passions. But after Harding won the presidential nomination, he told the party, hey, I have this mistress that kind of like supports an enemy of the United States and also has hundreds of love letters in her possession that she could publish and kind of destroy us in one fell swoop. Which
you're like, you didn't think to tell us that before you won?
Hey, smart on him to wait, right? You know, get in the position.
Probably picked him.
Yeah, get in the position and be like, okay, you got to fix this for me. And fix it they did, because the party reached out to Mr. and Mrs. Phillips, asking them to keep everything on the hush-hush, to which Carrie responded with a list of demands, including an annual stipend, which they eventually agreed to pay. Meaning that Carrie Phillips, at least to our knowledge, is the first woman to successfully blackmail a U.S. president.
I am so proud of her.
We love
yes, queen, get your bag.
We love a blackmailing queen. That wasn't his only affair, though. All right, don't get me wrong. And the next one had even better proof of it. A child. Nan Britton had Warren's younger sister as her high school English teacher. His younger sister was her high school English teacher. Just letting that sentence sink in. Soon after she graduated, or at least I hope, maybe before, Harding had started a romantic relationship with the woman 31 years younger than him. 4 years after Harding's death, Nan Britton published a book titled The President's Daughter, which claimed her young child Elizabeth Ann's father was the former president, which many thought to be impossible, as Harding was believed to be left infertile after a bad case of mumps as a kid, supported by the fact that he had sired no children with his wife. He never had. Maybe, I don't know. He was messing around though, so who knows? But yeah, they thought he got mumps, he can't have kids, and his family kept that going for like a long time. The book also had some other scandalous claims, the most popular of which was that he used to invite Nan Britton to the Oval Office, where they would then like have sex in a closet just off the Oval Office.
Warren G. Harding walked so Bill Clinton could run.
Britton said that Harding had agreed to help her financially support Elizabeth, but after his death, his wife refused to continue payments, which led Britton to be forced to write and sell the book in order to support the family. After its release, Britton was the victim of merciless attacks on her character by politicians over her portrayal of the dead leader, which eventually forced her into seclusion. Ancestry.com, however, in 2015, after the death of both Nan Britton and Elizabeth, proved conclusively using their and Harding's known relatives that Elizabeth was indeed Warren Harding's daughter.
Wow.
In the case of Elizabeth Ann, Warren Harding,
you
are the father. Yeah. Moving a bit outward from Harding's personal life, we land in the sphere of Charles R. Forbes and the Veterans Bureau. Forbes was an immigrant from Scotland who would go on to fight first in the Army first in the Marines and then the Army during World War I, where he won the Distinguished Service Medal. He was stationed for 4 years in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, where he happened to meet an Ohio State senator on vacation, Warren Harding. They were fast friends, and he supported Harding's presidential campaign earnestly. For this, Harding appointed Forbes the first director of the newly created Veterans Bureau, where he immediately began embezzling large sums of money.
Fantastic.
Under his supervision, the Veterans Bureau denied more than 2/3 of wounded soldiers' disability claims, and many found it hard to get vocational training that was meant to easily transition those who served back into the wider economy. Forbes, all the meanwhile, was negotiating with contractor friends of his to overcharge for the construction of hospitals that were commissioned to be built to support the large number of wounded soldiers in the wake of World War I, over 300,000. Instead of $3,000 per bed, Forbes and the contractors agreed to increase it to $4,000 per bed and then split the remaining profit with the contractors and the Bureau's chief counsel, a man by the name of Charles Kramer. In 1922, Forbes took it a step further. At that time, the government had been stockpiling away hospital supplies that were left over, also from the First World War, kind of like it was the government stockpiling cheese in caves. Do you know that story, or is that just lost on you?
I do kind of remember that.
Yeah, for anyone out there who doesn't know that, just Google American cheese caves, and you can go ahead and you can go down a little wormhole there. We still have cheese in caves. Still. Mm-hmm. Forbes saw this as free money, and he began selling these stockpiled supplies to contractors at well below market value and just pocketing all of the income from these deals for himself.
Love it.
Harding's personal physician, Charles Sawyer, was actually the one who first caught wind of the dubious dealings and alerted the president, who at first refused to believe his friend would do something like this to him. But after proof was shown to him by Sawyer, Harding was in a bind. He didn't want to face the backlash of this kind of scandal on his administration, and instead forced Forbes to resign, but allowed him to flee back to Europe before he could get charged.
Nice.
Talk, however, traveled fast in Washington, and an investigation into the matter started just weeks later as people heard about it. And under the pressure of Chief Oh, and under the pressure, Chief Counsel Charles Kramer of the Veterans Bureau committed suicide in the wake of the facts coming out about it. Elias Mortimer, leader of one of the construction companies that was part of the illicit deals to build hospitals at inflated prices, had his relationship with Forbes sour on the account of Forbes fucking his wife, which is not usually good for your business relationships.
No, usually that does not get you a discount.
No. So Elias Mortimer was more than willing to tell the investigation all he knew.
Literally everything.
Mm-hmm. And Forbes foolishly...
That man fucked my wife.
Okay, but you've been talking about this for an hour. Can we please talk about the scheme? He made me watch.
They took my wife to bed.
God
Gave her the old one too.
Elias, please. Please.
She was screaming my name when he was inside her.
We paid people to be here. Someone has to write all this down. He's traumatized.
Put in every detail.
Forbes foolishly returned from Europe to face trial and testify on his own behalf, but to no avail. He was convicted and sentenced to 2 years in prison, but was released and would go on to live for another 22 years before his death in 1949. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the scandal so big that it was the Watergate. Before Watergate, the Teapot Dome scandal. So, even before the gas crises of the 1970s, the U.S. was worried about oil and fuel. And with war freshly on their minds from World War I, America wanted to ensure that their Navy would always have access to enough Texas tea to liberate more Texas tea from countries across the globe. That's why President Taft set aside oil reserves across the country to serve as a backup reservoir for the American war machine. One of these, in Natrona County, Wyoming, was named Teapot Dome Oil Field on account of because the big old rock formation that was in the field that if you squint, looked like a teapot. And it was called Teapot Dome.
I'll call it the Teapot Dome.
Great. Badass name aside, this field was replete with oil, which, as far as Harding was concerned, was just a bunch of money under the ground that was being wasted. Which is why he signed an executive order in 1921 that would transfer control of Teapot Dome from the Navy Department to the Department of the Interior, headed up by former New Mexico Senator Albert B. Fall, who, by the way, I didn't talk about it here, but also had a part in covering up a murder earlier in his life. When he was a lawyer, he helped cover up for one of his neighbors who almost definitely murdered this guy. But feel free to explore that on your own. It's not here today. He's not a good guy, and he has kind of a sketchy history. That's all you need to know. But Harding and Fall became friends on the Senate floor, which is what helped secure his position in the Ohio gang, even though he wasn't from Ohio. Well, Fall now had control of Teapot Dome, and he went about leasing the rights to drill oil from Teapot Dome oil fields to companies, and eventually settled on giving the rights to Harry F. Sinclair of the Sinclair Oil Corporation. Which, by the way, those who might know, the Sinclair Oil Corporation stuck around for quite some time after all this happened and wasn't defunct until 2022. And they were well known for, they had that little green dinosaur logo. It said Sinclair and then a little green dinosaur. I definitely saw their gas stations throughout America. Fall also had leased the rights to another oil field, Elk Hills in California, to Edward Doheny of the Pan American Petroleum and Transport Company. Should have made that one a little bit smaller. That's the reason why they went out of business first. Although
it's way too long. Why would I ever want to say that name?
Although both of these were issued without holding a competitive bidding process to secure the best deal, that was not actually required at the time, although it would later be. Like now it would be illegal for the U.S. government to give a contract out without holding an open bidding process, but it wasn't at the time. The leasing contracts immediately garnered scrutiny as they were seen as very favorable to the oil companies and not so much to the government. On top of that, after the contracts were written, Albert Fall became noticeably richer pretty quickly, paying off tax bills for a ranch that he owned that had been due for a decade up to the point. He just paid it all off. And also making other uncharacteristic purchases to improve upon and expand said ranch. In April 1922, someone wrote Wyoming Senator John B. Kendrick claiming that a secret deal had been brokered between Fall and Sinclair to secure the Teapot Dome contract. And he pushed for an investigation into the deal. In March of the next year, the Senate officially launched their investigation led by Wisconsin Senator and Republican Rover La Follette, who started off trying to prove Fall's innocence because they were in the same party, but kind of got suspicious when his office at the Senate office building was ransacked just a little bit after announcing the investigation.
Interesting. It's so funny how those things happen.
What a coincidence. An inquiry into the matter was pushed forward for 2 years by Democratic Senator Thomas Walsh from Montana, but everywhere they turned, the records kept miraculously disappearing. Just, oh God, there's no records except for the contract. We can't find bank records anywhere. What's going on?
Where could they have been? Where could they go?
Well, finally, just as the investigation was about to give up, they looked like, at this point they were thinking, well, the contracts are, shady, but not illegal. Maybe we can fix it in the future, but nothing was wrong here, right? Because they even came up with like papers saying like Harding knew about the leases, was okay on them, multiple people signed off on them. But just as they were about to give up, they found a bank record showing that Doheny of the Pan American Petroleum and Transport Company, I think that's the last time I say it, had extended Fall a $100,000 interest-free loan around the time that he was awarded the Elk Hills oil contract.
Interesting.
And this led to uncovering that Sinclair had also extended an interest-free loan worth over $400,000 to Fall at the same time. And these two loans combined were worth almost $9 million in today's money. Cases continued in civil and criminal courts through the 1920s, all the way up to the Supreme Court, where they ruled that the leases were obtained in a corrupt manner. And both the leases for Elk Falls and Teapot Dome were revoked, and the oil fields returned to Navy ownership in 1927. 2 years later, Fall was found guilty of accepting bribes and was put in jail for 1 year, becoming the first American presidential cabinet member to be jailed for crimes while in office. Sinclair was fined and jailed for 6 months, but not actually for the bribes themselves, but for lying to Congress. And even more weird, Doheny was somehow acquitted for the bribe, even though Fall had been convicted for accepting bribes. But this is most likely, I think, because they couldn't link him directly to the payments. So they knew the company had paid him, but they couldn't get like just him, which is why neither of them were actually hit with corruption charges or bribery charges, except for Fall for accepting the bribes. The oil reserves of Teapot Dome sat untapped for almost 50 years after the scandal before the U.S. started pulling oil from the ground again in 1976. They pulled just over $500 million worth of the black stuff up, about 22 million barrels, before selling them to a New York-based oil company for $45 million in 2015, the first time that Teapot Dome had been leased out to an external party since the scandal. But the stains upon the Harding presidency were already deep, and the once beloved president is now considered to have one of the most corrupt cabinets of all time. People do mostly still claim that he didn't know much about these, that he did become aware of the Veterans Affair, the Veterans Bureau affair, but he wasn't aware before, and then he did force him to resign once he knew. So he's still really insulated from a lot of them, but his whole administration, not great.
Was a little sketchy.
Yeah, he kind of strikes me as a pushover. Like,
yeah, 100%. I mean, everything that you said about him, like in his campaign, was very much like people pleaser, pushover, That kind of thing.
There's a quote from Florence, too, that I will paraphrase because I can't remember exactly, but it was basically something along the lines of, he seems to get stuff right when he listens to me and nothing when he doesn't.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like she was the neck. He's the head, but she's the neck that turns him. For sure.
Absolutely. So I think he just put his friends in power and just kind of assumed that they would do right things, and then
what they were supposed to do.
And
crazy.
then didn't really police them at all. So yikes. Kind of reminds me of also Ulysses S. Grant when we talked about the whiskey ring, and he was like, he's widely considered to not really have been complicit in a lot of the corruption that went on, but that he just always believed his friends would never do anything bad. So when people would tell him, like, Ulysses, these people are doing illegal stuff, he'd be like, nah, that's my friend. He wouldn't do that.
My friends would never do that.
Nah, they're good
They would never.
people. That's why they're my friends.
They're good.
So by now, you know more than you might have thought you ever would about the life of the 29th president, Warren G. Harding. But the lessons of his life and presidency, although the latter was brief, extend into modern day. A president that is bent on tariffs and tax cuts for the wealthy, who surrounds himself with a bunch of favoritism hires that prove to be extremely corrupt. And this was not the last time that those that surround the president would find themselves jailed. But only 2 other cabinet members have yet served time for crimes committed while in office, both during the Nixon administration and related to Watergate. So it's no surprise that the 2 rotten apple administrations draw so many comparisons. But who knows? Maybe there will be more in the very near future.
Maybe.
And with that, that's the story of Warren G. Harding and Teapot Dome. Yeah, definitely not one that's talked about, but had a really solid streak for like 50 years before Watergate, and then no one remembers it at all.
We just don't talk about it.
It's not as interesting. Someone
It's the first time hearing about it.
Someone one-upped him, so now they were like, whatever. There's been more corruption since then, so.
Oh, 100%.
Just, it's not cool. Power creep. But, yeah, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of White Collars, Red Hands. If you liked what you heard, then you can go ahead and support us. Show us some love by writing a review. You can write a review on Apple Podcasts with words or leave a star rating. If you like stars, well, you got 2 of them right here. But no, really. You can also leave a star review on Spotify if you want. And if you're listening to one of those hipster podcatcher services, thank you so much for supporting small, local podcatchers. That's very cool of you. And you can also support us by liking, following, subscribing, whatever option your podcatcher has. We'd love if you did that as well. But if you want to watch video, you want to see our faces, that's only available on Spotify or at YouTube, youtube.com/whitecollarsredhands. And hell, you might as well check out our other socials as well, right? Facebook.com/whitecollarsredhands, Instagram at whitecollars_redhands, X at whitecollarspod. You can catch us on TikTok, where we post a short form video every single week that gives you a little sneak peek into what our episode's about, and that's TikTok at whitecollarsredhands. And if you want to give us money, well, we don't just take money, okay? We have a little self-respect. So we ask you to buy some merch. And to do that, you can go to whitecollarsredhands.com, click that button that says check out our merch, and that'll take you over to Datchery, where you can buy a shirt or a hat or a mouse pad for you, your mother, grandma, your dog. You can give it to whoever. I don't care, but we get a small cut, and we'd love if you did that. The best and most free way that you can support us is just by telling a friend. I think we should bring town criers back. So if you're so inclined, thank you. If you're so inclined and you have a town square wherever you live, go ahead and get a bell, print off some posters, walk around, hear ye, hear ye.
Yes.
Dost thou have heard about the podcast that is ripping through this great nation? I don't know why he'd be in California all of a sudden.
It's ripping through the nation.
It's ripping through this great nation. Listen to White Collars, Red Hands, brah. wherever you listen to podcasts.
I check.
And then ring your bell. Sure. Do that. And then if someone asks why you're doing it all weird and stupid like that, be like, I don't know. I've been brainwashed by these two people on this White Collars fucking Red Hands podcast into doing this. Blame it on me. I don't care. Is that it?
I think so.
Oh, hell yeah. All right. I'm just riffing. We're over an hour. This is crazy. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for listening. And we will see you next week on another episode of White Collars, Red Hands.
Red.
Jesus Christ, that was bad.